All right, everybody. My name is Jay Hippis from the Minnesota DOT. I'm the co-chair for TZD along with Donna Berger from DP. Welcome to the Stakeholders Breakfast this morning. I'd like to thank the Minnesota Safety Council for providing the space for this event. I think this is our second time at this location, so thank you again to them. In addition to the people in the room, and we'll do introductions here in a little bit. We have about 20 people joining us remotely, so thank you for those who are unable to make it here in person today but are joining us online. Today's topic is about work zones, and somebody asked, well, how do work zones impact all the E's? And the speaker today is going to tie how all the E's impact work zone safety together. So there's challenges that go along with a safe work zone, and we're looking forward to the presentation today. Today's presenter is Leidle from Safety Signs. Reed's been working on this since he was 15 years old. So a long time in the industry. And I know Reed really well. And I'm the most passionate person when it comes to contractors and work zone safety. So thank you, Reed, for being a supporter of TD and coming here today to present. So he's currently 25th year in the industry and is current Vice President of Safety Signs, the Northland Chapter of the American Traffic Services Association, also known as ATSSA, of the National Temporary Traffic Control Committee. So he's very active both here in Minnesota and nationally. So we're looking forward to Reed's presentation. But before we start, we're going to pass around the microphone to do some quick introductions here in the room.
Morning,
Christine Hernandez, the State Towards Your Program Coordinator. Of Traffic Safety.
University of Minnesota Center for Transportation Studies.
Jeremy Allen with the St. Paul Police Department.
DMSF. Traffic Safety is a Metro Law Enforcement Liaison.
With the Office of Traffic Safety. Osler with St. Paul Public Works.
With the Office of Traffic Safety.
Office of Traffic Safety.
Gordy Pearson, Office of Traffic Safety.
Scott Key, Office of Traffic Safety, Southern Minnesota Liaison.
Run State Patrol.
Smith, the Center for Transportation Studies at the University of Minnesota.
Mark Peter, AAA.
In Leidle, Office of Traffic Safety. Office of Traffic Safety. Joni Agency Nurses Association.
Tom West Central TZD. In MnDOT Government Affairs.
The Traffic Safety. County Office of Traffic Safety.
Human First Laboratory, University of Minnesota.
There, Minnesota Department of Transportation, Office of Traffic Safety and Technology.
From MnDOT Metro Work Zone Engineer.
County.
From with Sanctuary Valley Riders.
For the audience, please type your comments in the chat box, and we'll answer those during the Q&A session. Other quick announcements here before we start. Remember to like us on social media, follow the TZD on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Our TZD award nominations are due this Friday, July 14th, so not too late to get an award nomination in. Our state conference is coming up very soon. It's going to be held right here in St. Paul, October 26th and October 27th. If you haven't been there before, it's a great event. Make sure you can sign up and come. Mark your calendars. A program announcement that Katie's going to have regarding the EMS scholarships. I'm going to turn over to Katie here quick.
Yeah, just briefly, as in past years, the program is offering a scholarship for folks in the EMS community to attend the conference that over the cost of registration, and 20 scholarships total. 5 of them also offer the option to cover hotel. So if you or you know of anyone who might be eligible, interested in the scholarship, I will send around a flyer, so please feel free to take a copy. And for folks online, please drop me an email and I can send that information to you electronically. And also for today's event, I just wanted to mention I'm going to send around the sign sheet. So if you didn't have a chance to sign in, if you could just do that. And if you're not on here pre-registered, just go ahead and add your name at the end. That would be great. Thank you.
All right, one update on the current number of fatalities. Year to date, so far in 2017, as of July 11th, is 173. Last this time was 186. Preliminary count for all of 2016 is 392. I'll read right now, and he's going to talk about work zones. Welcome, Reed.
Thanks. You and both helping inviting us to be here and helping get this, keeping me organized and getting this pulled here. So again, with safety signs and also representing the Northland chapter of ATSSA, I started this career in traffic control when I was 15, working for a small company in South Dakota. I've made sandbags and loaded trucks and swept floors and teenagers myself. I can't believe my parents let me do this work and out on the road when I was 16 and 17. That experience was really a strong education in and of itself about the real world and specifically traffic control. In the 90s, I came to Minnesota, resumed traffic control career after college, and in one we kept, and we had closed 8 lanes on the interstate in 1 year. But telling you this is often when we talk about safety, when we talk about traffic training, there's philosophical things, theoretical things. There's the stuff that we look at pictures and talk about, and then there's the real world. And so I value those experiences that I've had, and there'll be a lot that we talk about that's down in the weeds. I'm going to dig down to some of the things that I think you should talk about over and over and over, and then we're going to jump back up and talk about some higher level things too. So again, what are the 4 E's need to know? I was thinking about work zone safety. I'm like, all right, well, work zones are everywhere, right? I mean, north, south, east, west, metro, no matter where you are, and the more barricades, the more signs, the better, right? We love work zones. And but then I get, how can we possibly make work zones safe for everyone? And it occurred to me that that question often comes up when we're talking about towards 0 deaths. I mean, is that a realistic goal? Okay, so a lot of what we're talking about here today specifically is, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make our work zones safe for everyone. And specifically, what does enforcement, education, emergency services have to do with construction work zones? There's some obvious things and some not so obvious things. And our thing we possibly can. Talk about the behind stuff here in a bit later in the presentation. But the low-hanging fruit, right? So challenge all of you today here, if you've, in your different areas, whether it's enforcement, emergency services, education, engineering, your head, that's one of the harder things, right? That's one of the more time-consuming things. That if it's a nerve, don't grab onto it, because if we're committed to doing everything we can, we've probably easier things. We probably are working the easier things, but some of these harder things is what we're down into. Improving is time-consuming, right, and a lot of work. We all have our normal, real, full-time jobs, and so the extra stuff is a huge commitment. And embrace it. From the zone perspective, then, that we're having right now, the unintended consequences that we've realized. So I think there's been some improvements and things have been evolving over the years, and certainly in my time here. But realize there's some things that have bubbled out, again, a consequence that we didn't make that. And its own opportunities for improvement that we want to address those. Some cliches like best practices and things like that, but they're relevant, and we want to identify those and share with you what's happening behind the scenes in work zone safety. So if there's anyone here that this is your first TZD you've ever been to, and it pertains to the work zone, I have driver behavior and ensuring an understanding of the rules of the road. Okay? Medical, so when a crash occurs, that's fast, efficient, and coordinated emergency response. For complying traffic laws and reducing unsafe driving practices. Hearing, I have designing and building safe and forgiving roadways. I want was overly profound or profound at all. Okay, there's a lot of work that other people have done and items people have put together that I'm using in this. I'm going to give credit during the slide and certain things, and I have a slide at the end if you want to see where I got some of this from. But today, there are hundreds of active work zones in Minnesota. They operate day and night. So when work zones, what are the 4 E's need to know? Okay, the ongoing public information campaigns to educate drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists about the unique characteristics of work zones and the steep fines associated with work zones infractions. Are we doing everything we can to educate the public about driving work zones? Medical group, work zoners, they coordinate and ensure construction projects do not interfere with timely medical services. What about medical actually in work zones or respond to a work zone incident? Enforcement. Okay, that's up enforcement, work zone limits, worker presence, speed limits, extraordinary enforcement. Are we in enforcement to the full extent that we could be? And then how enforcement know what to do, not do when they're in a work zone? Engineering, narrowed lanes, altered road services, temporary configurations, restricted capacity, things that change what are normally driving down the roadway. So we talk a lot about designing safe and forgiving roadways, but what about how work zones themselves are designed? Are there unintended consequences? Are there little things we're missing that would make a big difference? So hopefully you've done this many times, okay? And I say because it doesn't matter if you're a pit traffic control company, working. It doesn't matter if you're MIN themselves or city county maintenance crew. If you're an emergency responder, when you go out into a road, we have the same fundamental principles of a work zone. Advance or transition or activity or excuse me. So I'm not dive down into this today because there's training specifically on how you should position your vehicles when you're taking a lane and all those things. But what I do spend some time on is how can we keep this simple? How can we keep this organized? And we're thinking about no matter what keys you are in work zones, what are the principles that we can stand on and come back to? Success. What ensures that we get a desired outcome? So fundamentals, right? These are things like your hey, you brush your teeth in the morning, you got to brush your teeth at night, right? That itself doesn't take a lot of training, and it's not rocket science, but it's one of the big things. Or before you get in your car, start your car, you have to put your seatbelt on, you have to put your phone away. Now, these are specific examples for work zones, but it's that kind of elementary things that I think we repeated, and then training and retraining. So it's taken the knowledge and the fundamentals that the veterans have and that we already have as policies and procedures and making sure new hires know that, or it's new information that we have and the new ways of doing things that we want to make sure our veterans who have always done it a different way know. I'm going to talk training today as it applies to work zones because we realized that that's an opportunity improvement for our entire work zone, traffic control industry, not just the private, but the maintenance and the utility companies, excuse me, designers and so on. I found, but if you come up on a lane closure, it doesn't matter if you're in Rochester, St. Cloud, Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Paul, you up to the same signs in the same order with the same words on the signs at the same distance, and you come with the same airboards at the beginning, and there's a taper, and it's just the same. It's the same, so people don't have to try to. They've trained and they see something that they're used to. The crazy analogy. What if we said for law enforcement, have whatever emergency lights you want, right? We know blue was good, but if you're patriotic, throw some white in there. If you're a Vikings fan, use purple and gold. Or if you come from across the river originally, you can use yellow and, whatever. It would, the point, we want things to be the same. We want them in our work zones when they're designed, when enforced, when they're implemented. We want emergency vehicles, when they're responding to an incident, to be the same, consistent. So that ties into the fundamentals, and it ties in training and retraining. And then of case studies. It's become to me as of late when we're talking about these things that people pretty much get it, whatever the topic at hand is, but if you have examples, beneficial. Hey, this is something that's working over here. And I know it and probably have irons in the fire, but if we could figure out how to roll this out to others, it'd be beneficial. So specific examples of opportunities to improve. So I'll share with you like an example of a fundamental. The man-formed traffic control devices, the MNMUTCD, it says in there that the of temporary traffic control is to provide for the safe and effective movement of road users through traffic control zones, reasonably protecting workers, response to traffic incidents, and equipment. So out on the road, again, construction, maintenance, emergency responders. This is a rule book. Road user safety, worker safety, and responder safety, etc. And objective of the temporary traffic controls is the efficient construction and maintenance of the highway and the efficient resolution of traffic incidents. So when you're thinking about, hey, do my folks, again, whichever one ease you are, if my folks, are they this? Some of the fundamentals, training, consistency, and best practices. Asking myself, either collectively, if we're fully committed to doing everything we can and not just lip service, yeah, but I mean, really, we're going to do takes to work zero deaths. Are we doing the hard, time-consuming parts to organize things like organized training, do the retraining? So think this from you and your coworkers' perspective, whichever group that you're in. Kind of stuff here for a bit. Temporary control zone is a highway where road user conditions are changed because of a work zone or incident by the use of temporary traffic control. Now that can be signs or flaggers or uniform law officers, etc. In position of emergency vehicles incident in a manner that attempts to protect both responders performing their duties and those traveling through the scene while minimizing, to the extent practical, the of traffic flow. Stuff out there. So when you're thinking about, hey, do my folks know what they need to know? The examples you can have in your head. Again, from MNMUTCD, traffic zone is an area of highway where the road user conditions are changed because of work zone, incident through the use of devices, informed law enforcement officers or authorized personnel. An incident area of a highway where temporary traffic control is imposed by authorized officials in response to a traffic incident that extends from the first device, could be a sunlight, a flare, to the last or the point where users can return to their original alignment. And when work occurs in a high volume, highly congested facility like here in the metro, be attended to vehicle storage or staging. So trucks or fire trucks that can respond quickly to incidents. Arriving at an incident should estimate the magnitude, the expected and the expected cues, and set up your traffic control for these estimates. So again, this is already in black and white. Now on this, and I don't know if you have ever seen this, it goes back to 2002. Now 2002 for sure seems like just the other day, but it's 15 years ago. Okay, put by MnDOT. I think that's towing. And Minnesota Metro Fire Chiefs. If you haven't seen this and you're looking for a training opportunity, this is a really phenomenal document. I want to touch on some of the things that it talks about, and you can take it back with you. An incident defined as any non-reoccurring event that causes reduction of roadway capacity, such as traffic crashes, disabled vehicles, spilled cargo, or brush fire. And for all traffic incident management process will improve the safety of those responding to an accident, reduce secondary crashes, in the unexpected traffic backup, and reduce the overall traffic delay. So the goal of management, the goal of the management of traffic incidents while developing a communication network. So I think this is so good. It goes into to talk about what are the primary roles and responsibility of each of the E's specifically. So for law enforcement, it's pretty forward, assist in detection, scene, assist disabled vehicles, provide emergency medical aid, serve as incident commander, super scene clearance, direct track, conduct accident investigations. For fire rescue, again, scene, provide emergency medical care, on. And they even have towing and recovering in here. So really nice job of bullet pointing how to think about work zones from each of the 4 E's perspective. And then 8 quick other subpoints here: teamwork, safety, response, position of vehicles, warning lights, unified command, traffic control, and off-scene staging. So maybe have either necessarily pertain or maybe it absolutely does. Applies more to your folks. I wonder, are they getting this and do they know this? Perspective, pretty straightforward. Well, each funding agency has their own role and responsibilities at a scene. All agencies should understand and recognize the importance of coordination. It's recommended for incident responders wear high visibility safety apparel. So I don't know what the policy is for the state patrol, what the policy is for tow truck drivers, the policy is for medical services, wear high visibility equipment. You know, us and our folks, I mean, visible and being seen means being safe. And if there's a chance, especially, but even if hats on or not, means that a car 70 or 30 or whatever speed might see me or might not. You know, we're just advocate for being invisible. Response, every effort to minimize the risk of injury to themselves and use the highway system. If possible, responders should respond to the incident with the flow of traffic. Dispatch should relay specific information about the incident location to help the response. Responders should coordinate through their dispatch to ensure if they need it. It's better for responders to get information through dispatch than to stop and see if there's help is needed. Park on the side of the road, not in both sides. Only block area. Use the flashing emergency lights at the scene. Necessary flashing lights. I mean, I've seen this in construction, especially when a kniving operation is just getting started. There's a variety of 50 different vehicles, and everyone's got every strobe and light that they have on, and it's very distracting. Comes to, or incident response to. Command. Locate the trooper in charge. Travel as soon as possible. And responding unit should position the traffic control devices. Needed immediately, should stage their vehicles off the freeway. And lastly, clearing lanes. It's taking the safety of all personnel in consideration. Traffic lanes should be open as soon as practical. We'll talk a little bit more some of those. So, coming back out here, big picture for emergency services. Okay, and you know, we have at safety for our people that we give classroom and in the field. You know, we do such a good job, and I know we do a great job of training our people so they know what to do right. And then I mean that thinks, gosh, we'd be doing even more. So I'm assuming that's kind of the same for everybody. And I think that when it comes to each other, that we can be honest and open about, hey, what training do we need? That when I get to what our industry is working on, visibility, right, being seen, establish and maintain control, and don't take more than you need. Excuse me. If we close 2 lanes on an interstate to safely perform the work and have some breathing room, then we need to do that. Okay, 2 or 3 lane interstate. But if we only 1 lane, we shouldn't take 2, and we allowed by MnDOT to take 2. That's because the congestion, the queues, the backup that we create, the speed disharmony where somebody's going 70 coming up on somebody who's almost stopped. So I think the true is same for emergency response. Announcement, you know, really the same. consist the same, whether you're, regardless of of what part of the state you're in or which one of the E you are, should be consistent. For engineering, I have the training again, and make a plan. I think if our engineering group is committed to towards zero deaths, we need to be honest and serious about having plans. So it's crazy to me that we would never build a bridge without having a plan. We would never pave a road without having, here's how you're going to do it. Here's what to do, and by default, here's what not to do. But we often don't have plans when we start for our work zones. We're often doing them at the last minute, right before the job starts. So I think it's an opportunity for improvement. It'll take a lot of effort. There are pros and cons, but I think it's something that if we're serious, we need to do. The thing that's in my head when I think about education for work zones is driver's ed and billboard and radio stations, and hey, could we do more of that? Could we? But I think for today, this can be each other. I think we can do better. There's some that should be abolished, in my opinion. And if we're truly committed and passionate about TZD, we tackle the hard stuff. So shift gears here a little bit, change lanes a little bit. I want to share with you some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that our industry and others are doing. Different groups involved. So again, I represent the Northland chapter of ATSSA, working with AGC, NCITE, MSES, counties, even FHWA, and things like this with Towards Zero Deaths. So there's a lot of different organizations and a lot of different people within those organizations that we've kind of got a fire lighted and we're working on. I want to illustrate how some of this all fits together. So that holds the statewide work zone safety committee meeting twice a year. So all the silos of MnDOT, whether it's construction, safety, maintenance, there's troopers, law enforcement, cities, counties, contractors, our ATSSA industry. We're saying, hey, let's talk about making our work zones as safe as possible. Okay. What could we be trying? Things come out of that. When you're talking about specifically construction work zones, form this liaison group, and so the lead from MnDOT and their different departments and representatives from our industry and also the AGC, we get together and we talk about what you're doing specifically, and I'm going to have a couple examples of that. And then the chapter of ATSSA has a temporary traffic control committee, and we'll reach to MSES, NCITE, the cities, the counties, federal highway, and of course our own relationship with MnDOT. And so here's how those are the same, and here's how some are different, and obviously all working towards zero deaths. So the statewide work zone safety committee, again, there's some of the different groups that are represented in that. The influence sections of those involved with work zones, information that is shared, the innovations, best practices that are identified so we can achieve safer work zones and fewer fatal life-changing crashes. And then the group, the purpose is industry suggestions for efforts to improve work zone safety, identify industry thoughts regarding existing state guidelines, standards, procedures, determine actions that industry can implement to pursue improve work zone safety. I have an example on the next slide. And then our temporary traffic control group, this particular group, because there's so many different people involved. But the group, or our focus, is for industry and agencies to work together. You know, we know that there's sometimes some competing interests, and we're going to do what we can to find out ground on some of the issues that matter for work zone safety. To establish, improve, maintain relationships and communications with agencies. It ceases to amaze me how, if we have a relationship, if we know each other from working on some things together, that if there's something that we don't agree on, how much easier it is to resolve. Again, not profound, but we realize that has to be a focus. To gain an understanding of agency perspectives. I and our industry has thought, we have a problem, we know the solution, why are we doing this? And then there's an perspective that we didn't even know existed, and now we kind of get that. Solutions. so just point out problems, but to say, okay, here's an opportunity to improve, and here's some things that we could do. To consistency of how specifications are interpreted and enforced, and meet with different stakeholders. So is ATSSA, our traffic control, specifically traffic control industry, MnDOT construction and traffic, and I want to give a nod to Dave Mesel at 3M, who's here today, who's put on how many miles, and I don't know, spent how many hours talking about work zone safety across the whole state. Specific, so liaison group, I suppose it was a full year ago now or more. Listen, we talk about making our work zone safer. We talk about there's some enhancements available, but I don't ever do them. Let's do them. And there's reasons why. You know, there's monetary reasons. Enhancements cost money. There's folks who are distracted by trying to get the project off the ground, and you want to do what? But we came with some suggestions, and what happened. So on I-94 out here from Paul to 120, eastbound, the movable barrier right out in front of 3M shop, we said we'd like to do is wider pavement markings. So if you can see, this is a 4-inch line, this is a 6-inch line. It's somewhat sun this picture, but I know you can see the difference on the screen, and you can really see the difference on the road. Wider pavement markings. We're going to do reflective pavement markings. So this road is wet, and you can't see it that well on the screen. The road's wet and black, and the lines pop. Enhanced retroreflectivity and reflective sheeting. We put a higher grade of sheeting on the barrier reflectors. So if you ever drove there at night and it looked like a glow stick in the left shoulder, that's what that was. Increased visibility of the channelizing devices. So we went from a 4-inch line to a sheeting to a 6-inch sheeting on our drums. In and of itself, these are all little things. They're all obvious. Hey, this would be a good idea. I know that everyone that drove through this judging these enhancements or considering these enhancements thought, why a long time ago? And we've already started to roll out some of these improvements statewide. Just a couple of how me consistently having all the right people at the table, this is going to make our work zone safer. Monthly, we want to tackle this tough stuff, make sure we get the easy stuff done, be talking to each other, initiatives, and pull in different groups. So it was probably 2 or 3, 4 months ago, a hallway conversation, we were talking about training. If you work for a city or county, depending on if you're a public official or private, depending on how long you've been around and what set conferences you've been to, you may not even know what training is available. You may not be eligible to have certain training when it comes to work zone safety. You may go to what seems like the top best training there is, and afterwards that was more for construction and about specifications than it was about the fundamentals of traffic control. And so what we're working on right now is like, all right, what training do we have? Let's get this organized. There's different groups, some different individuals. There's lots of different places where information is available for training. What do we have? And then let's look at what do we need. And where these are matching up, let's connect the dots. I'm really about this. It takes some time. It's taken time. There's a lot of different people that are involved. It's going to take effort. We'll clearly identify what the problem actually is. Solution might even be harder. Who's going to do this, have this magic wand? Important, right? It's going to be one of the most significant improvements we've made in the Minnesota work zone traffic control safety in a long time once we get this figured out. And I have no doubt that it'll absolutely save lives. Example is meeting and working with consultants. So in all these conversations that we've been having with MnDOT and others, we've been talking about specifications, designing, safety enhancements, all these different things. It just kind of occurred to us, and you may not know this, but consultants, private consultants do more and more designing work zones, planning, construction, and administering, and at the table. And we thought we reach out to that group. And one by one, some of us from ATSSA went and met with these consultants and said, what's working, what's not? Is there a magic wand? What would you do? What would be different? What would be better? Pages and pages and pages and pages of feedback. And they're like, this is amazing. No one's ever done this that we're aware of. No one's ever talked to everybody to get a consensus of what could we do different, what could we do better. And so you have this huge opportunity to get back with all of them and address some of this stuff, but it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be time consuming. I think that's another example of big improvement that we can make. So Institute of Traffic Engineers, the counties, the cities, similar to the consultants, they all have their different ways of doing things. They all have their different ways that they think is best, or their SOP. And so one by one, we have to reach to those groups as well and talk about, hey, this is what the practices are to have the safest work zone. Plan requiring plans. I'm this up a couple of times because it's important, and this probably, once we get training thing up off the ground, will be the next thing that we have to tackle. So here is a list of, at the bottom is an illustration of some of the different companies that have been working together when we met with consultants. Very bad. It was 9 months approximately of reaching out to them and driving to them and finding times that work and making them. We didn't even talk to all the people within these companies. We got to a handful. But for fundamentals, hey, working. Let's not reinvent the wheel, or let's not fix something that's not broken. Okay, let's focus serious about, are we doing everything we can in every job, and if not, let's do so. How are work zones designed and planned? This is engineering E. Put that up and maintain. That's us, right? That's our industry. So there's a spec piece of that, and there's an enforcement to that. But the opportunities for improvement we have to be more consistent. Again, what's offered by who? Does everyone know what's available? Training do we need more of? So it's, again, time is consuming. A lot of the reach to and working together towards zero deaths is a top priority of ours. We're committed to it, and so we really appreciate this opportunity and ask for the questions.
What questions or comments do you have for our speaker today? Online folks, we'll go back here. Please go ahead and type your questions into the chat box, and we'll be sure to ask them aloud in the room here. Right, we'll go back here to Rob. Introduce yourself.
Rob Pearson with North Memorial. Call out attention and a comment to play off of what you had mentioned, but we have an updated video available for police, fire, EMS, anybody who wants it. Was put through the Department of Health and Safety. So if you even Google Scene Safe video, it pops right up. Sergeant Scott Wall, I think, is still doing presentations. Chief Judy Thill with Inver Grove Heights Fire Department. So if you want someone to come out and do a presentation, but it talks about setting up the scene for first responders. So that's available on YouTube for free.
Nice.
Okay. We got a question over here.
So what are your thoughts on working with agencies to set reasonable speed limits so drivers don't feel like they're artificially low, which will just lead to huge speed differentials for the rule followers versus those that say this is crazy and I refuse?
So the question is working with the authority to set speed limits. I can from both sides on that. And I would say it obviously gets to decide that, okay? There's a process for lowering the speed limit, whether it's temporarily 24/7 for construction. Talking about work zone, or are you talking about okay. Yeah, there's a couple different types of speed limits. There's black and orange, which is advisory. Probably know that advisory means, hey, please go this speed. We suggest you go this speed. Okay, and then there's black and white, which is regulatory. So like a road sign, a do not enter, speed limit is obviously enforceable. shared the evaluations of work zones that have been done and ways of reducing the speed limit. And Johnson is a great resource for this. And so my best to phrase what he shared with us, that putting up a speed limit sign to some end almost does nothing, because probably most of the traveling public is going to typically drive at the speed that they feel is safe to do so. And I'm not talking about the outliers, right? The person who drives 49 in a 55, or the person who drives 90 in a 70. I'm talking about the general public, typically, whether it's through work zone or not, at the speed they feel comfortable doing so. And so if the lanes are 12 feet wide, which they normally are, and the road is straight, then why am I reduced to 45? I got a rule follower with 50 cars lined up behind him and no one in front of him. If we have geometry changes and narrowed lanes and crossovers and workers are present, it's when it definitely makes sense to reducing speeds. From I want people to go like 2 miles an hour, right? Seriously, because I'm standing out here, and even if I have concrete barrier between us, a little different. But if it's just cones separating me from this traffic, I want you going 2, and I don't care how far it backs up. But the reality is that we have a responsibility of balancing work zone safety and mobility, and so doing so, it is a balancing act. So back to your original question: how can we work with agencies to reduce our speed limits? Okay.
So just making sure that you're setting something reasonable. Because if you set it too low, then you have safety.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on that from the hip? Because I don't know your question.
I guess, because you say that the workers want it too, which
Yeah.
makes sense. So you have, so you have the ability to execute control over the speed limit. And so how are you working internally and with the agencies that you aren't saying, want this very low and you get your way, which may actually lead to more crashes rather than...
I think we may have a perfect example. Peter was just working with the I-94 project on the west side of the metro, so I'm going to turn over to Peter Buchan. Example.
I don't know if it's a great example, but it's an example. So you're familiar with the I-94 from the tunnel to Brooklyn Center, and then on the east side from Woodbury to St. Paul has been under construction. Concerns, particularly on the west end between Brooklyn Center and the tunnel, that the speeds were too high. So the shooter question is the contractor can make the project engineer aware of their concerns. The project engineer can choose to use a worker's present speed limit, which is a speed limit that while the workers are present without previous authorization can lower it down to say 45 miles an hour. And they were doing that. There was them to move across traffic and take signs up or puts up, take them down. There's sense on the contractor's part to do that, even though we think it's a good, reasonable way to do it, because at midnight when there's no work going on, to have a 45 mile an hour speed limit doesn't really serve the public, and it does create a lot of speed violations. There's a perception that, well, we're kind of setting people up. So we try not to do that. But patrol was also concerned, so we worked with, we met with the patrol, we met with the contractor, we met folks, and we agreed to lower the speed limit. And while doing that, the patrol is monitoring speeds. They added additional enforcement to bring the speeds down when the workers are present. There were some unique things, as Reed pointed out, that we moved the traffic over. There was going to be exposed catch basins that were sticking up a few inches till they put the final course on. And there was going to be work going on the right side that moved workers closer to the traffic. So with that, we agreed. Unfortunately, what we've seen is the speed hasn't really changed. So we went out, part of that was to do a follow-up. Are really effectively lowering the speed limit? Is the public responding to the speed limits? No, they're not. We've done kind of what we can. We can't take over for the driver. There was an educational campaign that took, MnDOT provides additional funding for extraordinary enforcement to have troopers on site during construction. So those things, but as Reed said, there's the public drive what they feel comfortable. Ours are quieter. The road, now they're on a smooth piece of pavement. Before they were one that's all busted up. So some of the tools that are available, but we'd love to have a tool that gets people to drive the speed that we want them to, and we don't know how to do that. Did that answer your question?
Actually, so I'm glad you showed up just in time, Peter.
All right.
All right.
Every work zone, right? But I've been on the work zone side of the cones, and I kind of remember, even though I haven't been in a work zone for a while and very often anymore, but I remember clearly most of the time it was, I just want people to be predictable and to go the posted speed limit. I mean, even if it's 60 interstate and standing from but if you're away from that car going by at 60, if you have both hands on the wheel and you're driving attentively and you are paying attention, we're probably safe, right? The reality is, and the reason it's so hard to answer and there's so many variables is because people are speeding, people are distracted, people aren't attentive. There's speed fluctuations, on and on, the inherent challenges of work zones. And we try to fix the inattentive driving and the drunk driving and the speed driving and the inconsistent speeds by present speed limits and more enforcement and our speed trailers. And we try to do what we can, but again, until we can control the driver or their vehicles, it's an ongoing challenge. So thanks for that, though.
Conkey, and I'm thinking from incident management, crash and such, and look at things from perspective of outside of what you normally do. I've been in the position a lot of time behind the wand and directing the traffic as they're coming in. Till one day I was with my wife coming up on a crash. It was night, lights all over, just red, blue, amber. This mix was a cop with a little wand waving it. Now, when I was on the other side, I'm going, why doesn't that idiot figure out what I want him to do? And I'm coming up, I'm telling my wife, I know he knows exactly what he wants me to do, but I don't have a clue. I was wondering if we could loud here, but this would be something totally different, but if we could come up with a different color, that clear path. So maybe you had, it's hard to do this, add one more thing, but say maybe high-vis green, that green cones reflector where it becomes a standard. When you see that and mixed all these lights, when you see green, that's a clear path to get around. Is kind of thinking, has there been any thought of something that helps that little wand in the middle try to get the word of where they're supposed to go?
This is not going to be I don't know, has been considered, and again, I'm there's been paint that's been tried in other states in work zones, right, instead of yellow or white. We know that pink sign emergency, so there's examples of things that are in place and people have tried. But I'm gonna instead of giving you an answer, I'm gonna challenge. I think it's those kind of questions and that kinds of thinking that will bring it down, will bring our number down, bring our number down. So, I did that today, and I don't time on, hey, here's some ideas of what color should that be and what could it actually be. But, those are the kinds of things that don't let that just fizzle, right? Whoever you can throw that out at and whoever can work on that, we should be working on that kind of stuff. So,
well, and from enforcement perspective, I think in the training, we got to let that cop know you're not as easily perceived as you may think.
Yeah, right.
So it helps lower the temperature, the blood pressure, and the patients when they get up there. Have a little, I'm not talking again the guy that comes through and you miss them when you see your flashlight, but I'm talking about the person that's just trying to figure out and all of a sudden they get the blunt of all the anger.
Thanks.
Road design, listen to the people that are actually using it. We can sit in the office and think how driver react to this and that. But each one construction projects and work zones is a unique situation. So what might work one place, same applied somewhere else, isn't necessarily going to work. So I think we need to listen to what the motorists are, how they're behaving, either through the construction folks or through, because with cell phones, at least a traffic engineer or a cop, and they're calling in or they're emailing in with these types of things, and kind of like a lessons learned type of thing. We need to be able to be reactive to that, because the speed limit type of thing, that big issue that Peter had mentioned earlier, and I think a lot of flexibility in thinking not everything we did in the past is broken, but not all of it is keeping up with the times and changing some of these different techniques and applications in our construction zones, and using things like LED signboards and that type of thing a lot more than just the same old static signs and that. Because, you know, when most people are traveling to work or where they happen to be, a lot are not looking at paint, they're not looking at signs and that kind of thing. They're doing what they want. But they're focusing a lot more on that in the construction zone, because things are changing. So if you have one little thing out of that's them doing something that you want them to do, and it could be an oversight just on the installation side of things. So I think, you know, this flexibility and changing and listening and that is an integral part of making these work zones safer. So more of a comment than anything else.
Environment, because, you know, I'm guilty and we're all guilty of getting hung up on, hey, this is how I think it could be better. This is how I think it could be different. And back up and say, what does the public need? What does the public want? What's the, you know, I think you said it clearly that if we can open our ears open, the solutions will present themselves. I appreciate that.
And I crunch. Okay, yeah, that's perfect.
I just want to take your idea about planning for emergencies. I'm with the motorcycle group, St. Croix Valley Riders. We do that now. We plan for our accidents. We actually, you know, have a trailer that's available for motorcycles that go down. You'd mentioned the number of deaths already this year at 176, or 173. We have 18 motorcycle deaths in Minnesota, which is down from last year. We can feel better that we're not Wisconsin, who has 26. We can feel even better that we're not Tennessee, who has 69. So we are doing some things. And on our side, we're really big on safety. We want our members to, of course, have the endorsement, but certainly to go further and have the training. We offer 5 different levels of training. It's all free to our members. I wanted to mention something else, too. Next year, the legislation in Minnesota, and this is a bill that's already been written, it's basically it's relating to the transportation, allowing motorcycles to split lanes under certain circumstances. I don't know if you guys understand what split lane, you know, driving between lanes means. That means this bill basically would allow motorcycles to drive between the traffic on the highways. We as a group, we think that's, I mean, we as a group really haven't developed a position on that. We don't like what we hear about it, because anything that puts a motorcycle between 2 vehicles at any speed, we don't. What state is currently practicing that? California. It is a helmet law state. We are a non-helmet law state. I say non-helmet law. We have restrictions on use. It has to be, I believe it's below 18 with a endorsement over 18. You don't have to have a helmet. There's many different laws across the country. But this lane splitting is something that I don't know if you're aware of, but this is a bill that's coming up next year, and also, you know, pertains to motorcycles filtering through traffic. So can you imagine, you know, you're driving through lanes and motorcycles are going to be the ones who would be driving between you and other cars and trucks and these types of things. So I don't know if you know about that, but I just wanted to let you know that legislation is coming up next year. So I was talking about that.
I've been in states where I've seen low speed, low volume roads, motorcycles drive, you know, split lanes.
Right.
A little if you don't know what's coming.
Right.
You know, I don't have official expert opinion on if that's a good law or not.
Right. And I'm not trying to find out your position. We're just, you know, letting you know about that as well.
Yeah, appreciate it.
We're not
Actually, it's a bill written by a group, I think, that's trying to push helmet laws. Because as you increase the closeness of driving, I mean, there's a safety factor. Whenever you put, in traffic, we have stop and you go driving, that's a dangerous habit for a place for motorcycles to be. We're more likely to get hit. But I'm not really seeing this group, but anybody who I think wants to put motorcycles closer to cars, I mean, next thing you know, usually the number of incidents of accidents and deaths could certainly increase. But then as that does, a more need for helmets would become a position. So, of course, we're more rights of motorcycles to ride without helmets at this time. But we don't think we would say no to that. We haven't formed an actual position on that yet. But I just wanted to let the group know that's a safety feature. That's a safety factor that's coming up to the legislation next year. And we'll be pushing, I would say, against that this time. But California, and they do it with laws, and they like it. But just to give you an idea of what's coming up for next year on the legislation.
No, not to that. Just a passing thought. Something we talked about many years ago. Obviously, work zones, you want compliance with the speed, whatever it may be. And many times, if you see a trooper working on, the vast majority of the people would slow down because of fear of apprehension, so they don't want to get caught and they don't want to get tagged. Years ago, the patrol started where they bought 25 5-liter Mustangs, and consequently then had a press conference and said, look at the things that are going to be around the state and working. There's a red one, there's a brown one, there's a yellow one, there's a black one. Put them all out and advertised it. So a lot of people think the value of an unmarked is that no one knows it's there, and then you can stop someone. Actually, the value of an unmarked is fear of apprehension. So if you were driving down the road after that press conference, you look ahead and you go, oh, there's a 5-liter Mustang. Is it or isn't it? And then you wonder. And all of a sudden, 25 that were bought, a fleet of thousands. What would happen if we took 2 to 4, 5 dealer pickups and them into squad cars, and then troops work, and then you advertised? Here we were going to have pickups that can be squad cars and working. And people would go to work zones and they would see that pickup truck and they go, is it or is it? So you're getting a fear of apprehension, and it's costing you a lot of money. Just a little tool in the toolbox, something we talked about many years ago. And DOT back when we discussed it before were reserved about it created a bad image. Something now can get people to slow down. Maybe to look at.
At first blush idea. I think it's a great idea. Yeah. I mean, we know that if there's a law enforcement officer with a red light and a gun, I'm assuming that people are going to slow down for that more than any sign. We know it's true. But we typically ask them not to enforce the law because we can't risk not having you sit at the beginning of the construction slowing people down if you get up on a DWI or whatever. So, if we had some magic unlimited amount of money that we could just have like 5 troopers every job roaming and pulling over and whatever, we wouldn't work on speed limit issue. But
people, whether it is or it isn't,
yeah.
They're not going to stop anyone, and all the compliance comes from the motorist going through thinking, I don't want to get tagged.
Yeah. Exactly. For that.
Oh,
add a comment. We talking a little bit more about the scare tactics, and is it possible that just before going to enter work zone, they could probably put a very and inspiring that on road or any states or in the state of Minnesota or whatever you want today, these many people died in work zones. Give a small number, so be careful. And then start giving them the other symbols or colors or whatever. I think when that stays in your mind, you are a little bit more killing someone rather than speeding. I don't want to reduce my speed because it's a pretty nice road. Have ever discussed or proposed that just very small signs, and we have all these billboards around, the electronic billboards, they carry the portable kind. Just 2 words, you don't have to distract the person with and that's enough there. And that was a question I had. And the same comment I had about this driving in between lanes. A few years ago, we actually visited Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. This is so common, and it's almost you get a heart attack because of highways, one after another, they keep coming, and just want to find out whether there is any data available, so it would compel people not to do this dumb, or even the legislatures don't do this dumb things.
That's a lot of data there about what it's called lane splitting and filtering. So there is a lot of data out there, and they have a position on that as well. It's positive with a lot of education based toward drivers, because you can imagine traffic zones are stressful enough. Now, what if you had motorcycles, who are trying to drive through the traffic while you're stressed out about what's going on? And now you have going on, many motorcycles very loud. You can imagine during the summer if you've got your windows down and here comes a Harley less than 5 feet away from you. That's going to, it's going to the tension of that situation for you. The work zone is certainly, more dangerous places for motorcycles, but I'm just trying to let people know what's going on with the legislature. That's a bill that's going to come up for next year. But there are positions on it. There are studies, that have been done. California seems to do it successfully. It's done for a reason, too, for motorcycle riders. The motorcycle themselves actually overheat in California, so that's one of the reasons why they do that. Minnesota doesn't have that quite as much as a worry, but certain motorcycles are not water-cooled. But there are studies out about that, and the data's out there. So.
Questions, Katie? Oh, okay. Okay. So we have a few more minutes.
Are you getting information and ideas from the actual workers that are out there as well?
Peter can speak to it too, but, there's a lot of pressure from the workers to slow traffic down.
So they'll know, everybody else knows stuff too, but like you said, there's people calling in, but they're the ones that are actually out there.
No one is saying, hey, just live with it, right? Just have this risk of people, it's that we have a responsibility of managing mobility, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here, because I want people going too. I don't care if hard backs up, but.
I guess what Rita is true when we we provide for that the contractor can work with the project folks in MnDOT, try and make changes, but I think communication could improve. But we work with Reed and his counterparts and other industry folks that provide those services, and we get together and to share ideas about how things could be improved. So those discussions are taking place, but I think on a case-by-case workplace, to empower people to make some decisions to maybe improve the work zone that may be associated with speed, but they think to improve or reduce driver confusion. Maybe they're seeing folks leaving at the last minute because the signing wasn't clear enough as to where they can go. So there's opportunities to do that.
Information is being given to the driver's perception of what is being done. Where I'm going with this is this year I've noticed much more road rage in drivers with zipper merge, with long strings of miles and miles of cones and nobody working. To me, it seems like people are so used to seeing the cones, the barrels, they're not really paying attention anymore because there's so much of it out there, it's lost its impact.
Know that industry knows that takes very seriously, especially temporary lane closures. I mean, if you're out at 94 and you're reversing westbound, all of west be closed, right? You're either getting ready, you've just poured graders, securing barrier and drums. It's a long-term work zone. It is what it is. But we know in temporary work zones where we have 7 miles of lane closure run out from Pine City to Sandstone, and there's only somebody in the last 100 feet. There's credibility. We promote road rage. All the bad things happen from that. And so that's a perfect example of planning. We're not this happen. Communication. Don't this. Enforcement. People don't set it up that way. Enforcement. Hey, that's not okay. It's all those things. Ridge and zipper merges and seeing. Yeah, I think that zipper merges are one of the most beneficial things that you can have in an urban work zone. And other states are like, we need to be doing the zipper merge and not just having people stack up for 3 miles and they want to get over as soon as they see the sign. We want to get everybody up to the end and have them take turns. And the more we do it, and the better people understand it, the more effective and better it is. And if we have people go through all that and drive through that 7-mile lane closure with no one in it, then it's an issue.
I do have my question here. I'm going to go ahead and read it. This is Karen Aldridge. Just a suggestion, could speeding enforcement cameras be set up in work zones?
I guess we could set them up, but they're not really enforceable. Our laws don't allow for that enforcement.
The audited enforcement has been proposed a couple of times in recent years. The legislature is not supportive of using audited enforcement, whether it's just in a work zone application or for full-time use. And the University of Minnesota has done some studies for us that show the public generally is receptive to the idea of the use of automated enforcement in work zones. While they're not in favor of being used everywhere, they are supportive of being used in work zones. There's a good research document. I can't put the name, but it was done by Frank Duma at the University or the Carlson School. Humphrey, thank you. So there's information out there, but the legislature isn't supportive, and we don't see that changing anytime soon.
That was actually the big question I was asking. There was the temperature of leadership because it's being in other states.
And if speed is the biggest issue, I don't know, and not to put you on the spot, but is that trying to push this in any significant way? Because we do have the data, we do have studies that show that this is effective. And if you're serious about it, I guess hope that MnDOT is able to find some advocates who could help push that.
So a couple things with, so I've worked with Frank on some of those projects. So one common misconception is that it's unconstitutional in the state of Minnesota, which is not correct. It's just not been passed by law. So there's nothing in the Constitution prohibiting it. It just has to be passed by law by the legislature. We surveyed drivers recently to figure out who's for unlimited speed enforcement and who's against and why. So what's basically holding people back. Most people are in favor of it, are in favor of it due to safety concerns. So if they believe that safety is an issue and it is effective, then they are in favor. Unfortunately, a big proportion of those that were staunchly against automated speed enforcement don't believe that speed is a safety issue. We're battling up against with the public that is really staunchly against automated speed enforcement. They don't believe that speed kills people. So using some communication here with the public where they're like just typing into the survey that speed has never killed anyone and we need to focus on more important issues like distraction. So, the battle is people don't believe that you die by speeding.
Are we time, Katie? Okay. One more. All right, before we adjourn today, I'd like to thank Reed again for the great presentation. Oh, so thank you, Reed. Fill out your evaluation forms. And our next breakfast is January 24th, so please mark your calendars. And don't forget about the conference coming up in October. So thank you for everybody for coming, and thanks again for the Minnesota Safety Council for hosting us. Thank you.